Hi, I'm Lindsey, and I'm talking with MedTech industry leaders on how they change lives for a better world.
The inventions and technologies are fascinating, and so are the people who work with them.
There was a period of time where I realized fundamentally my job was to go hang out with really smart people that are saving lives and then do work that would help them save more lives.
I got into the business to save lives, and it is incredibly motivating to work with people who are in that same business, saving or improving lives.
What better industry than where I get to wake up every day and just save people's lives?
These are extraordinary people doing extraordinary work, and this is The Leading Difference. Hello, and welcome back to another episode of the Leading Difference podcast. I'm your host, Lindsey, and today I'm excited to introduce you to my guest, Dhruv Agrawal. Dhruv is the CEO and president of the management board of Aether Biomedical. He studied medicine in New Delhi before dropping out to pursue a bachelor's in business management. He also has a postgraduate diploma in medical device development regulatory affairs from University of California, Irvine, and a master's in data science from the University of London. Under his leadership, Aether Biomedical has achieved CE certification and FDA registration for the Zeus V1 Bionic limb and established distribution across 9 European countries, the US, and India. Additionally, Aether has raised over $12.5 million in private capital from leading VCs and has been a part of multiple European grants and research programs for an additional $6.5 million in non-dilutive capital. All right. Well, thank you so much for being here. Welcome to the show. I'm so excited to speak with you today.
Yeah, it's a pleasure to be here, Lindsey. Thank you so much for inviting me.
Of course, of course. Well, I would love if you wouldn't mind just starting by sharing a little bit about yourself and your background and what led you to MedTech.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm Dhruv Agrawal. I'm the CEO of Aether Biomedical. We are a company based out of Poznan in Poland. So on the western part of Poland, it's a little bit chilly here. As a company, we are a team of about 55 people right now, currently present in the US, Europe, Middle East, as well as India. And we focus on making bionic hands for upper limb amputees.
Amazing. Yes. So I want to get into everything amazing that your company does, but going back for just a little bit in your own personal history, can you share a little bit about maybe growing up and what experiences led you to think, hey, in the future, maybe I want to do X, Y, and Z?
Mhm. So first of all, entrepreneurship was never a plan for me. I didn't even knew that there was a thing called an entrepreneur until I was easily into high school. Both my parents are doctors. My dad's a pediatrician, mom's a gynecologist. And as it happens in India, if your parents are doctors, you kind of know that you have to become a doctor as well. So I went to the coaching classes to prepare for medical entrance examinations. I actually met my co-founder there about 10 years ago. We both got into medical school. I was generally comfortable with medicine, growing up in a hospital with doctor parents around. So I was generally comfortable in a clinical setting, but I realized that I was much more interested in the technological aspect of medicine rather than the clinical aspect of it. And that was when I was getting into the second year of my university. And luckily, my dad, for my 18th birthday, bought me a 3D printer, like a very simple 3D printer from China as my 18th birthday gift, because I was really wanting to get into that world. And that's where the story begins. So even till date, my dad jokingly says that that's the worst gift he has ever bought for me, 'cause that made me drop out of medical school.
Oh, no. Okay. So you're given this gift and you started, I imagine, tinkering with it, learning how to use it. So tell me about that.
Yeah, the thing with my co-founder as well, even though we went to the same medical university, we were not really friends in the first year. We were just colleagues. But when I got this 3D printer, it was like one of those things that you assemble. You get a kit and you assemble. And I was asking around people in my university and they were like, come on, what are you doing? Like, I don't want to come to your apartment to assemble a 3D printer. And my co-founder was the first one who said yes to coming down and assembling that printer with me. So that's how our friendship essentially started in the university, even though we had known each other for 3 years by that point. And then we started, of course, by very basic things like printing mobile phone covers and keychains. And we were just in awe with the fact that I have something in my room in a studio apartment where I can just build physical things, right? And this was back in 2018. So 3D printer was not such a consumer product where, it was, of course, used in industry, but it was not something that you would imagine having at your home. at least not in India. And then we actually found out that there is a society called Enable, which is an NGO that makes very simple, basic prosthetic designs for kids. So we started by printing those and, start going to some amputee clinics around and trialing that out with patients, just purely out of technical curiosity. We didn't really had a draw towards amputation, so to speak. We were more driven by the technical curiosity of, it sounds interesting to make a prosthetic hand. So that was the beginning. And then slowly, things happened very organically that we went from wanting to 3D print basic things to starting a biomedical innovation club in our university to incorporating a company in India, then to coming all the way over to Poland and now having 55 people.
Holy cow, that's an amazing story. Thank you for sharing about that. So, okay, so you started off with this curiosity, like, hey, let's see what we could do with this printer and how we can make it work for people. And I love that your initial pull with it was to actually provide something that does help people. So that's obviously a core value, something that you hold very dear. So can you speak a little bit more? Did you have sort of any personal experience or within your family, or what led you to say, you know what, hey, I've got this really cool tool at my disposal. Let me start using it by actually doing something that helps others.
Mhm. I mean, the honest answer, I would love to say I had some personal experience, but the honest answer is no, not really. I don't have one of those stories where I can tell you that like I met an amputee 15 years ago or 20 years ago and have had that motivation for that time. It was just pure technical curiosity to begin with. But of course, as we started building basic devices and giving it out to people and seeing the response of what a very simple, $50 thing can do for a person who is missing a limb in an impoverished family in a village in India, that's a very powerful thing. So at that point, we realized that we started getting more and more close to upper limb amputation as a field, as a clinical specialty within itself. Of course, both me and my co-founder coming from medical school, growing up in family of medicos, we've always had it in our heart to work in the clinical side of things. We've always liked working around, helping people get healthier and better. But amputation specifically was an area that we were very lucky that we found as an area of interest that developed within the both of us.
Yeah, of course. Okay, so you started printing these limbs and then you realized, "Oh my goodness, there's such a need for this. There's so much opportunity here to really help people." So tell me a little bit about the evolution over time of how you have made it better and better, more technologically advanced, more ergonomic, all the things that go into that. Can you speak a little bit to that learning curve and process?
Mhm. Yeah, it was a very long learning curve because not only did me and my co-founder had zero background in business. We were 18-year-old, 19-year-old kids, right? We were just teenagers and we really had no idea what we wanted to do. And not only that, we also were not engineers. So we didn't have any engineering experience or expertise either. So everything that we did in the very beginning, at least, was self-taught. I just knew I had an inclination towards electronics and programming. My co-founder was much more towards mechanical, CAD design, and things like that. So we started learning these courses for free on edX and Coursera and all these, MOOC platforms. And that's how we built up the very first prototype of the product by getting some small grants here and there in India. Of course, the situation is very different right now. We have an R&D team of 30 people, very experienced, a few PhDs here and there. So I don't really design anymore in my day-to-day life, but that's how we started. And same was the side of the journey of coming from India to Poland. Again, that was not something that was planned at all. We had no experience in business. We had no experience in raising funding or raising money and things like that. We just learned on the go, applied to over 100 different programs because most of the investors said no to us back then in 2018 to funding because why would they say yes? And we looked at like, okay, can we get some grants and things like that? Applied to over 100 programs. Luckily got selected in this program in Poland, which was like a $50,000 program back in 2018 and decided, yeah, let's try that place out. And came to Poland. I literally came with a backpack with stuff for 2 months because that was the plan. Come for the grant, stay for 2 months, go back to my family in India. And it's been 7 years since then.
There you go. Oh my goodness, that's great. So Poland and you get along, it sounds
Great.
like, just fine. Excellent. Excellent. Okay, so I really appreciate you sharing about, especially you were both so young but so eager. It sounds like just, yes, let's learn, let's develop the skills that we need to along the way. I would imagine, though, coming into it perhaps that young and not having as much business experience or any really in the past, something that I really admired when I was kind of looking through your LinkedIn profile was when you post, a lot of times you share stories about areas that may be considered, I guess, mistakes or stumbling blocks or things that you've overcome on your path. And I would love if you would share maybe just a couple of things that come to mind as an early founder, because your story is amazing and unique, but there are lots of other founders too who find themselves in similar situations where they're like, woof, I've got this great idea. I know what I want, but here's maybe what I should look out for to avoid.
Yeah.
Could you share a little bit about that?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, the first thing is mistakes are unavoidable, right? It doesn't matter whether you're coming from a background of a medical school dropout or if you have 10, 15, 20 years of corporate experience and things like that. Because I do find myself thinking a lot about, wouldn't it have been better if I would have graduated and then did an MBA and then started a company? Yes, it might have been better, but the things that I deal with in my day-to-day life in the startup, I don't think this is taught anywhere. So the first and foremost thing which is of importance is that mistakes are unavoidable. It's okay to make mistakes. The biggest learning that I have is mistakes are unavoidable, but it's up to you to be decisive enough to pivot as quickly as possible. So don't look back at the mistakes that we have made, because one of the worst things that we have done in this company, or where we have failed the most, or where we have seen that like, this is where we could have done things better, but not about making a wrong decision. They were just about being indecisive and being in a dilemma for a long, long time. It would have been far better if we would have made certain decisions quickly, gotten feedback, and quickly pivoted instead of just being in a dilemma and trying to balance two sides for a long time period. An example of that would be when we launched the first version of our product into the market, we realized that we had made some errors from the point of view of what should be the feature set in this product. And so, for example, the product was available only in a medium size hand in terms of the dimensions, but majority of the market is for a small size hand. So at that point, we couldn't really just miniaturize things because there's a physical limitation. So at that point, we had to make a decision of, do we scrap this thing completely and build a new hand from scratch that starts with a small hand and then has a medium size option as a grow up? Or do we continue to work on the medium sized hand and then launch a small sized hand separately? Finally, we decided to do the second option. But looking back again, I don't think it would have been better or worse either way. I think both of these options are fair. It's just the fact that we spent over 9 months going back and forth between, okay, let's continue putting our efforts and energy into the medium size that we have right now versus, okay, this month we are now suddenly feeling, that's not going to work out. Let's start building the second version. So that dilemma of indecision is probably the worst thing that you can do. Just make a decision, own up to it, move on. If it works out, great. If it doesn't work out, you're gonna have learnings and you'll be stronger at the end of the day. So that's
Yeah.
I would say would be an example of one of the key errors that we made.
Yeah. Well, thank you for being willing to share that. And that's such valuable advice and feedback. And so, as you recognize this and go, okay, so that didn't work as planned or in the way that I would prefer, what did you end up deciding? How do you go now moving forward when you are in a position of, I have a major decision to make? I feel like both options have value and merit. How do you end up deciding, okay, I'm not going to leave this just in this hazy middle ground. I'm going to make a decision. How do you go about that now differently?
I think the first and foremost thing that entrepreneurs or anybody who wants to build a new product or anybody who just wants to build something new is be very, very, very honest with yourselves about, am I solving a real problem? As founders, as creators, as developers, it is so easy to go into that mindset of, you find a problem that you can relate to, or you somehow think that this is a real problem. It doesn't matter what feedback you're going to get. You're going to convert that feedback or create a narrative or story from that feedback that is going to align with the impression that you have built in your own head about what the real problem is. So one thing that we really do right now is just focus on problem market fit at the very early stages of launching a new software, building a new product, building the next version of the hand, or whatever else we do, is really try to question, are we solving a real problem? And in a completely unbiased manner, do people agree with me that I am solving a real problem? So that's what I would say would be a primary thing that we do differently right now. Of course, at this point, we start getting users involved much earlier into our development process. That is something that we did not do in the past, and hence the surprise that we got at that point. So we start involving users, different stakeholders, and things like that much earlier. But at the same time, I would say that it's not to say that I would penalize myself for the historical decisions that I took. We did the best that we could potentially with the resources that were available at that point. Now we have much more resources, so we can do all these things. So don't feel pressured to do everything on day one. Start with something, move forward, and build that maturity as you grow.
Oh, I love that. That's excellent advice. Thank you for sharing. Yeah. So, that's a great segue. And I love the fact that you were talking about the end user and the importance. And it's so funny because, of course, ultimately your goal is to help these end users and improve their quality of life and whatnot. But to your point, it does get easy to get so bogged down in the details of what you're creating and innovating that perhaps you forget sort of the bigger picture at times.
Yeah.
So, speaking of these end users, can you share any stories that might stand out to you as really reinforcing to you that, hey, gosh, I am in the right industry doing the right thing at the right time?
Yep. No, absolutely. So we have had many phenomenal end users that have reiterated our belief in the product that we are building, the problems that we are solving, the company and the organization that we are building as a whole. I mean, generally speaking, patients change their devices every 3 to 5 years, and that's really our entry point of getting a device into the hands of the patients. But even with those, a patient is using another prosthetic device, they start using ours, they will see a step change in the functionality, and that's always empowering. But the most interesting stories are where we have really seen patients who, for example, congenital amputees tried a prosthetic device 10 years ago, 15 years ago, and then made a decision to live their life without any prosthetic device. So got used to a life for 15, 20, 25 years of living a life without a prosthetic device, just with an amputated limb or a limb difference. And then we come in with our product, they see it, they use it, and they are ready to adopt that again. And that's a much powerful validation for us, because somebody who has used a device, looked at all the advancements over the last 2 decades, actively decided to not use any of those advancements, and looks at our product and says, this really solves the problems that I was waiting for someone to solve for the last 2 decades. Like, we had this situation with a very famous Polish guy, Jacek Mela, who is the youngest Polish person to go to both poles, the North Pole and the South Pole. And he is a bilateral amputee on legs, and he has a unilateral amputation, so one arm. And he has not used a prosthetic device in, I think, 15 or 20 years, something like that. So for a very long time frame. He met with an ambassador of ours and was finally convinced after 15 long years to give another try. And we fitted him over 3 months ago, and he's been performing phenomenally with the device, and he's so happy with that. So those are the moments that really give us more confidence, or give us a boost of confidence in the product that we're building and the company that we're building.
That's incredible. Wow, what a story. Yeah, and I love hearing those kinds of stories and just to reinforce, hey, you really are making a difference. And I'm sure that helps on the days that are a little bit harder, a little trickier, it helps to have that to hold on to. So, your impact goes so far beyond even the places that you've mentioned before. I was reading about how you've worked with the Open Dialogue Foundation, and there's been some work in Ukraine. And I'm wondering if you could share a little bit about perhaps that collaboration and or some of the other exciting collaborations you have going on with these amazing organizations all over the world.
Yep, absolutely. I mean, the work that we do in Ukraine is something which is very close to our heart. And what you just mentioned a moment ago, it's exactly that type of work that keeps us going on the hardest of days. I have so many amazing stories from the patients who have been fitted with our device, because at this point in the last year or so, we have already fitted over 100 patients with our bionic hands in Ukraine. We primarily work with Superhumans, which is NGO based out of Lviv, a great place, really the mecca for prosthetics at this point, I would say. They're doing a phenomenal job of getting these patients in, rehabilitating them, fitting them with our device, and then training them on how to use the device. In fact, even supporting them in the post rehabilitation, acquainting them to back to the real world as well. And we send teams of doctors from the US, from Poland to Ukraine to actually fit these devices to patients. And we have had a lot of success stories come out of it. We have people who have amputations even at the level of shoulder, who are amputated all the way up to the shoulder or four-quarter amputation, and they are successfully able to live a independent life with our device. I think the best story that I have had, or the part that really made me tear up, was when one of the soldiers got fitted with our device, and his really, really big wish was to be able to do the first dance with his wife with both hands. And I got to see that, and it
Oh,
was the most amazing feeling ever.
oh my goodness. Yes, I don't know how you couldn't just have the waterfalls start with that kind of story. That's incredible. Thank you for sharing about that. So, as you look toward the company's future and your own, what are you excited about moving forward?
I mean, we are currently in the process of getting a new version of our hand in the market, which has all the learnings of the last 4 years or so. So we are definitely really excited about that. You have to keep in mind, when we launched the first product, we didn't even have enough money to, because prosthetics are expensive. So we didn't really have had enough money to buy our competitor devices or the devices from the past, to look around, to see, touch, feel how they are built. Everything that we built was purely out of our imagination and based on what we could find on the internet, and go visit a doctor who fits these devices, have that 10-15 minutes to look around that device, and so on and so on. I mean, 4 years later, now we have the experience of fitting close to 700-800 patients with our device, all that feedback that has gone into the next version product that we are going to be building. So very excited about that. We continue to develop the software platform. So we're not just a company that is focused on providing a device to the patient, but we provide an entire software platform that's like a digital twin for the patient. So it supports the patients throughout their end-to-end journey. Because it's not just about giving a device to the patient, but it's all about, can we improve their quality of life? Can the patient pick up a glass of water? Can he tie his shoelaces? Can he water a plant? Can he do the activities that he really wants to do? And from that perspective, the software platform that we continue to build focuses on things like adherence, occupational therapy, physical therapy, monitoring of the usage of the device. Because the thing in prosthetics industry is, the day you give the device to the patient is not the day you have won the battle. That's the day the battle actually begins. Because now it's all about making sure that you deliver on the promise of helping him get better quality of life.
Yeah. Yeah. I'm sure that's an exciting challenge, but it's a continually evolving challenge too. And there's probably variations, I would imagine, on people embracing the technology a little bit differently and how you handle all that. Yeah. Excellent. Well, that is a very exciting future, and it's so much fun to hear about. And, you've had a great career so far. I'm sure it's wildly different than what you may have imagined as a kid growing up. But what a cool gift that you're bringing to the world. You've been recognized quite a bit. You're the 30 under 30 for Europe, and you've been involved in lots of different cool organizations. You've been a TEDx speaker. What are some of those moments like? Have they been surreal? Is it just like, oh, thank you, and just confirmation that, hey, you are on the right track? Or what are those kinds of moments like for you?
I mean, definitely the first round of funding that we raised in Poland was a huge check mark for us, because it's that moment at which you realize, somebody wants to give me money and somebody wants to give me $250,000. I've never seen that much money together on a single bank account or in any way, shape, or form, right? I come from a normal middle class family. You don't have that. So that was definitely the first micro checkpoint. Let's say, I mean, both the things that you mentioned, the TEDx thing, the Forbes 30 under 30 thing, coming from a background in India where these things are really important, although they're not so important for me as a person, but they're much more important for some reason to my parents and to society. India has a different place. We put a lot of emphasis on these types of things. So from 6-7 years ago, looking at these lists coming out, or looking at, oh, this cool guy spoke on a TEDx talk, sending him an email about, do you want to be an advisor in my company? I'll give you 5% shares, and so on and so on, to actually doing those things by yourself. That's definitely pretty well as well. But again, at the end of the day, there is nothing better than seeing a new patient get fitted with the hand, seeing the reaction of their family members. They have a daughter, they have a son who they hold their hand for the first time. They hug their wife. I mean, just being around amputees and patients who use your device, something that you build, and that helps them get better at their daily life. That's, I would say, the most rewarding thing ever.
Yeah, of course. That's wonderful. Yeah. So, oh my goodness, this is so great and very inspirational. But pivoting the conversation a little bit just for fun, imagine that you were to be offered $1 million, speaking of those wonderful sums of money, to teach a masterclass on anything you want. It can be something within your industry, but doesn't have to be. What would you choose to teach?
I have two topics in mind. One is I would probably teach a masterclass on pitching, especially for first time founders. I think that is something which I'm good at. And we have obviously raised a pretty decent amount of capital up till now. So that would be the one thing that I would say. So, kind of a combination of pitching and starting a startup for the first time, especially in the field of hardware, medical devices, things like that. And the second thing that I would really like to talk about is just probably try to put my thoughts together and making a masterclass on how to never give up. Because I think that that's a very underrated quality, but that's a very important quality. There have been countless times in the history of our company where we have felt that, like, this might be it. But it's all about what you do in those moments and how you go beyond those. I think it's all about that.
Yeah, absolutely. And how do you wish to be remembered after you leave this world?
Just as a positive change maker, I really would like all these patients that we are helping and giving these devices to. I just want to be a small part of their lives. Just as I was part of the life of the veteran who got married, I just want to have those small moments clubbed together amongst these different individuals that we are privileged to work with.
Yes, of course. Wonderful. And then, final question. What is one thing that makes you smile every time you see or think about it?
Oh, that's very simple. Patient getting fitted with our device. Today, we see a patient getting fit our device and that smile on their face and things like that. And that's even much bigger, much more interesting in Ukraine because many times when you go to these hospitals and when I go to these hospitals in Ukraine, you have to understand that these people have gone through a lot. These soldiers who are putting their body on the line for their country, they are, of course, there's a certain sort of low morale that they have when they're amputated and when they're in these hospitals and things like that, where they don't really think that there is ever a possibility for them to regain something back. And you go in there and you show them a bionic hand and they're not sure if this thing works. And you put the electrodes on them and they open the hand or close it for the first time. And then you suddenly see those expressions change from like, what has happened to me to, oh, what can I achieve? That is also an amazing feeling.
Yeah. Oh, I love that. What an amazing gift to be able to help somebody bridge that gap and witness it. How cool is that? Oh, well, I think this is incredible. I am so grateful for you and your co founder for starting this company and just being able to give so many people hope and new life, really, just a new way of experiencing life. So, thank you for all of the incredible work you're doing. I'm so excited to continue to follow your work, support your work, as I'm sure all of our listeners are as well. So, gosh, I just really appreciate you sharing all of your advice and stories and wisdom with us. So, thanks again so much for being here.
So much, Lindsay. Thank you so much for having me.
Of course, of course.
And we are honored to be making a donation on your behalf as a thank you for your time today to the American Society for the Prevention of Cruelty to Animals, which is dedicated to preventing animal cruelty in the United States. We really appreciate you choosing that organization to support. And thank you just again so very much for your time here today. I just wish you continued success as you work to change lives for a better world.
And thank you also so much to our listeners. And if you're feeling as inspired as I am right now, I'd love it if you'd share this episode with a colleague or two. And we'll catch you next time.
The Leading Difference is brought to you by Velentium. Velentium is a full-service CDMO with 100% in-house capability to design, develop, and manufacture medical devices from Class 2 wearables to Class 3 active implantable medical devices. Velentium specializes in active implantables, leads, programmers, and accessories across a wide range of indications, such as neuromodulation, deep brain stimulation, cardiac management, and diabetes management. Velentium's core competencies include electrical, firmware, and mechanical design, mobile apps, embedded cybersecurity, human factors and usability, automated test systems, systems engineering, and contract manufacturing. Velentium works with clients worldwide, from startups seeking funding to established Fortune 100 companies. Visit Velentium.com to explore your next step in medical device development.